The time is now 7 o'clock on Monday, March 8th, 2021. I call the Lisle Library District Personnel Policy Committee meeting to order. The Lisle Library District recognizes Governor Pritzker's Executive Order number 2021-01, which extends Executive Order 2020-07 as amended by Executive Order 2020-33 and Executive Order 2020-44, the January 8th, 2021 Disaster Proclamation, and the Government Emergency Administration Act number 100-06-40, which suspends certain requirements of the Open Meetings Act, allowing library trustees to participate remotely. All motions will require a roll call vote. Can I have roll call, please?
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
Thomas Duffy.
Here.
Emily Sostek.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Tatiana Weinstein.
Here.
Beth McCollum.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is opportunity for visitors to speak. Do we have any visitors?
No remote and no in person.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, approve minutes of the November 11th, 2020 Personnel Policy Committee meeting. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
This is Trustee Duffy. I move to approve the minutes of the November 11, 2020 Personnel Policy Committee meeting.
Vice President Bartelli, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
No. Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Thomas Duffy.
Aye.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Aye.
Emily Sostek.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to number 4, LLD Policy 300, Library Cards, Update Draft Discussion, and I'm going to pass it over to the director.
Okay, so this is a current policy, and the only item that has changed is item D3 and item E3. And item D3 refers to last year, Governor Pritzker signed HB 2096 into law, and that's the Cards for Kids Act, and the bill amends the Illinois Local Library Act and the Public Library District Act. Again, creating the Cards for Kids Act, and the act allows non-resident students whose household falls at or below the U.S. Department of Agriculture's income eligibility guidelines to obtain a library card. And the applicant would have to also provide relevant documentation for this. So the item in red here, the text in red is straight from the statute. So that's just plugged in. And then item E3 no longer applies. So it's kind of a quick little update to policy 3. Any questions?
I had a question, but you answered it in what you said already. It was about the statute, but since you said it was taken directly from the statute, I'm good. Thank you. Trustee Duffy, did you have any questions? Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Vice President Bartelli.
I'm not quite sure. You have the URL on here about more information on D3. Is that going to be, dumb question, is that going to be included in the policy, or is that for our information?
That's just for your information.
Thank you. Okay.
Couple of questions.
Yes, President Hummel.
So, is this basically the ones that are like not like the non-residents that used to have to pay for a card? I mean, I know regular people that are not income eligible, they would still have to pay for a card. Is it basically just that area that's just talking about, is even expand the boundaries, so to speak?
No, it's just for non-residents that fall below a certain.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, because is it like you have to, like if you're a non-resident and you want to buy a card, isn't there
Should
still?
be the closest.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the cost out on E3, is that just for this or is that for everybody? that it would be,
That's for everyone. We took out this fee a while ago, it's just remind.
so yeah,
remaining the
because I thought,
policy.
that's what confused me, because I thought we addressed it.
We
before.
did in another policy, but we never took it out of this one.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this draft? Okay, then I'm going to ask the committee if we are comfortable bringing this forth to the entire board at our next board meeting.
Yes.
Yes, all right, thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 5, LLD policy 670, library security update, draft, and discussion. And I'll turn it over to the director.
Okay, thank you. Library policy 670 is a current policy, but it was last updated in 2002. And since 2002, the library has secured the facility with more than just alarm systems. And the ILA standards book under the safety chapter 6 recommends having security cameras stated within policy. We've also provided for more accountability in terms of mentioning staffing and repercussions under C and D. It's a bit more than we previously stated. So we go through alarm systems, security cameras, staff, and actions or repercussions in a little more detail. So this is up for discussion in terms of language or adds and subtracts.
Okay, thank you. I have a question just right off the bat. There's a combination of shall and will in here, and I didn't know if we wanted it to be uniform and all the in the same in all of them. So actually on the first page, page 9, it was just shalls. But then on page 10 under D1, there's a will. That's the only will, actually. There's a will there, and then there's shalls and all the rest. So I didn't know if in D1 it should be shall. I mean, just for uniformity's sake.
Okay, well, I think in the majority of the newer policies, we were using the word shall in
Okay.
most. So I've updated D1.
Awesome. And that's it. I when I was reading through this, I appreciated how detailed and thorough it was, because it helps me to know, okay, so this is what we have when it talks about the security cameras and the that we keep the footage, that there's all of that information in there, where the cameras are, and all of that. And I appreciated that. And I appreciated the staff information too, when it talked about the person in charge and then the facility monitors. That helped me too to understand fully the responsibility of the library security. So I appreciate that. So that's all I have about this. Vice President Bartelli, did you have any questions, comments, concerns about this one?
On page 11, under C, number 4, when you read that sentence, administrative staff are responsible for the safekeeping and distribution of LLD keys.
Good catch.
Okay. And I'm not quite sure. Under section B, number 5, when you read that, recorded footage, purposes of enforcing and administering. Are we using it at all times, or would we be using the footage only for infractions in the event we had an incident? I mean, is that assumed? Is that understood? Or is it not relevant? I read it, okay, the footage will be solely for purposes of enforcing and administering or assisting appropriate authorities. I'm assuming that's in the event we need to look at the recorded footage.
Correct. I mean, this is under,
Security camera, right?
so it's for security purposes.
Okay. And then just a general question. What if a resident calls 911 on their own? You know, you don't necessarily, if you feel threatened, there's a possibility, you know, everyone's got a phone. I mean, I would yell out personally or, you know, get someone's attention. But in the event somebody did call 911, and you come to find out possibly, you know, what we have our rules and regulations about what infractions are, but every individual person may have a different idea of what constitutes a threat. So, you know, put it delicately, what really, do we have any liability on our part about, in the event someone should call 911 on their own, come to find out it's simply something that they feel is a threat or an infraction and actually doesn't really amount to too much? Any thought? Not applicable?
Are you asking like if they would be able to gain access to the security footage?
No, I mean, I think, don't we talk about, am I in the wrong section about who call, I mean, who, when people go to staff about an issue? Library security. So we're to report if we feel something. We should take it to the director, correct? Is that in this policy, or let me look here?
I think what you're referring to is under actions.
Okay,
That
right.
lays out where staff take action in terms of if there's a matter we can handle or who we should call if that's something that we cannot manage. As far as patrons calling 911, I mean, that of their own volition, that's absolutely fine on their part. If you're talking about patrons who are abusing calling 911 or calling for, you know, no reason at all, I mean, we are not liable for a patron's actions in that respect.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Duffy?
One minor thing, since it's security, you do reference it in C4 codes, but I think you may want to call out the fact that staff areas are only accessible through codes, like the keyless entry, because that is part of the security, but it's not necessarily mentioned as a specific thing in here. If you want to, because we've talked about cameras and we talk about everything else, but I don't know if that was something you want to bring up into like all staff areas, all applicable staff areas will be, you know, security code entered or something like that. That was
Yeah,
only.
we would have to use the word applicable because not all staff areas are. I'm trying to see where to add that, because this C4 is about responsibility for safekeeping and distribution of, and then where are you talking about just stating that there are code only areas? Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah, well, let me ask the question a different way. Are there areas within the library outside of the administrative office, such as the IT area, the you know, the reference area, the books, are there where you have to gain access by entering a code to get into that area? Is there more than one outside of the admin office?
Generally with a key, right now with a key, but who knows in the future. So right now, everything outside of the admin office and the technical services office, those are with code, and then everything else like there's closets or mechanical areas, you would enter with a key.
So I think what I would probably say, maybe I would put like a C5 that says the administrative office and technical services area will be accessible only through keyless code-based entry or something to that effect. I know we don't want to, you can modify that, but yeah.
Can I make a suggestion to not specify the offices or spaces because of possible changes to come in the future? So maybe make applicable staff areas will be accessed via key or keyless entry, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's a security measure that you're calling out.
Okay, did you have anything else, Trustee Duffy?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. President Hummel?
Yeah, the only thing under security cameras, should we maybe add something to make it? I know we have security cameras now, and I've had reservations in the past with using cameras, the Big Brother argument, but I don't know, should we add any language that gives future boards flexibilities, or this doesn't bind a future board to absolutely mandate that they have cameras, correct?
No policy does, any board can change policy.
Okay. And then I know in B6, with the recorded footage, it is subject to FOIA.
Well, it says it's public record.
Yeah, Public Records and Local Records Act. And actually, that's kind of, I'm all for transparency, but also that's kind of part of the problem is, I don't want that, our security footage to get FOIA for some, somebody's found with somebody, or even if it's like just trying to track a family member or something. That's comes with the territory. There's nothing we can do. That is
The law.
Yeah, that's the law. So, I guess that's more of a commentary. It's part of the other reason I'm not a really big fan with the, security cameras, but it is what it is, I guess. It comes with, so far, thankfully, nothing's happened, but that's all.
Okay, thank you. When I was looking back, I did notice another will to change to a shall. It's an A1. The LLD facility and campus will be protected, so shall, if we were changing them all to shalls. And that's it. Does the committee, yes, did you say have something else? I'm sorry. Tatiana, did I cut you off?
Oh, no, I said, okay.
Oh, okay. There's a delay, I think, sometimes, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't messing up. Okay, so committee, do we feel comfortable putting this policy forth for the next board meeting as well? Yes, awesome. Okay, moving right along. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 6, LLD policy 315, loan periods update draft discussion, which isn't much of a change, but I'll let the director talk about that anyway.
Okay. So the only change here is that there's a 2-time renewal. It goes to a 3-time renewal, making the total week checkout a 12-week versus a 9-week. And the reason that this policy is being put up for discussion is that the library has received a couple of patron phone calls during the whole COVID period asking us to extend our renewals. A lot of reasons. A lot of people are very busy doing other things while, being in COVID and would like an extension. They've referenced other library systems that have longer periods. So what I did was I asked the department directors to think about it, talk to their staff, and all of the department directors are in support of 12 weeks, not much more than that. We also reviewed other libraries, and having 12 weeks actually falls right down the center of all of our neighbors. So for example, I'll go 4 and 4. So Woodridge, Lombard, Bolingbrook, and Darien have 9 weeks, and that's what we currently have. But Wheaton, Glen Ellen, Downers Grove, and Naperville all have more than 10 weeks or more. So Wheaton has 10 weeks, Glen Ellen has 18 weeks, Downers Grove has 18 weeks, and Naperville has 33 weeks. So having 12 weeks kind of falls in that sweet spot there, right in the middle. Aurora Public Library has 12 weeks. So this is just for upper discussion to see if we'd like to extend it. And like I said, department directors all feel like 12 weeks is a fair number.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I appreciated hearing about the area libraries and where we fall in there. And I think that moving the renewables from 2 times to 3 times is a great idea. Vice President Bartelli, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I'm good with that.
Okay, Trustee Duffy?
I don't have an issue with it. I guess, I mean, we can see how it impacts, like can we see if there's an increase on holds or wait times such as that? But correct me if I'm wrong, you can't, if someone places a hold, how many times the renewal gets affected then, right?
Yeah.
See, as I said it, I'm like, oh, I know this answer already.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm good with it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. President Hummel?
At first I had reservations, but you're saying I mean, that would be right in the middle with everybody else, and it's not really been a problem anywhere else, and it's actually been requested by patrons.
Yes.
I mean, I know when I checked out books, I mean, it's amazing when you have to renew how long you actually get the book for. So it sounds like another, 2-3 weeks. So,
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I mean, as long as, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think it was Trustee Duffy just said, I mean, I would monitor that though too, because I mean, if that does become an issue, I mean, we could always revisit it.
We can.
So, yeah.
Well, and just so everyone's aware, if you do have material checked out that someone else has put on hold and you have not returned it on time, the library does contact you to ask you to return it because another patron has requested it. And I'm speaking from experience. So just FYI, they do that. So just FYI. Okay, so are we good sending this to the next board meeting as well, another policy? Perfect. Okay, moving on then. Next item on the agenda is LLD policy 902. It's a new policy, Library Service and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I'm going to pass it over to the director.
Okay, so yes, this is a new policy. It is recommended by the ILA Standards Chapter 2/Governance, where it recommends a separate policy on the ADA. The formatting for this particular draft comes from the American Library Association's own Library Services for People with Disabilities policy. And that policy mentions services, facility, employment, and the like. And of course, the library already complies with ADA, it is law, but having a policy that outlines our facility, employment practices, the meetings we have, collection, partnerships, and compliance with associated laws. And then it also delineates how a person can file a complaint are all part of having a proper ADA policy. So that's what's here. Any questions and edits? Yes, shall. There shall.
There's shells all over the place, so that's good. I actually underlined them because I wanted to make sure we were being uniform with all of our policies. I did have a question in A, under facilities. It says the LLD strives to provide patrons a universal design, and I didn't know if it should be an universal design. Like I'm thinking because it's a vowel, right? But I wasn't 100%. So I'll put that out there. Tatiana, you look like you're not following me.
No, I know what you're saying, and I'm wording it in my head.
Okay. So I don't know.
Might be one of
People
those exceptions.
people can think about that however you want to. And then also in C collection number 3, I had a question, and I actually emailed Tatiana earlier today about this because there's a typo with the website because I tried to go to that website today. But before we get to that part, I just have a clarification question with number 3. So it says the LLD provides information about the Illinois Talking Book and Braille Service, TBBS, on its website. The TBBS acts as a liaison with the Library of Congress, comma, National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped program. So I wasn't sure about the comma there. Is it like is it the Library of Congress's service? Is that what that is? I wasn't following what all those things were.
Or is there a comment after blind?
Service for the blind. I think that's all part and parcel, because that comes from our information on visual services that we have on our website. So that's straight from there. And I think we pulled that when we received those items from the Lions Club and things like that.
Okay,
So,
okay.
I can double check that though.
That's fine, thank you. And then just so everyone knows where it says for more information on these programs, please visit, and it's missing an L. It's ilbph.org. As I said, I was trying to go to there earlier and I contacted the director because I couldn't get to it, and we realized that it was a typo. Other than that, I don't have any questions. I'll pass it over to Vice President Bartelli.
In item B under meetings, number 2, the request for a qualified interpreter. That would be by the resident to the library.
Yes,
Needed, correct?
yes.
Okay. Let me see. And under collection, number 2, we mentioned the resources. We don't mention Braille. I know it's mentioned in number 3. Is there, we're saying auxiliary devices. Is that considered Braille in number 2? Should we mention? We say,
No, because that's more about equipment.
I'm sorry, equipment? Okay.
Yeah, the devices is more about equipment.
Okay. And item D, we talk about service animals. I'm wondering if, first of all, I'm somewhat concerned about it being a service animal versus what some people call a comfort animal. We can get all kinds of animals. I've witnessed this on the riding the Burlington Northern during my working days. I don't know if we would foresee an issue, whether we call it service, and we are assuming no one's going to bring in a comfort animal, as in a pet bird, snake, so on and so forth. And then also under that same issue, I guess this would go hand in hand. A service animal has been certified and normally has some kind of certification.
Like a best or something.
Yeah,
They-
we can ask about that.
I'm sorry,
We cannot ask about that.
you cannot, okay.
Specifics regarding the Illinois Service Animal Access Act. And there are some things, and staff have been trained on what we can and cannot do in regards to service animals. So we have to comply with the Illinois Service Animal Access Act. I know there has been more I forgot when this was passed. I don't have that information at my fingertips right now, but I know recently there have been some more opposition to what you're talking about, Marjorie, on airplanes and things like that in the news. And things like that. Right now, we have to comply, and there are some strict guidelines for what staff can or cannot say or ask. So that's why in this policy under E, it just says we comply with the Illinois statute, and then we outline some of the requirements. And this is also within our policy under 610 Patron Code of Conduct. So we're kind of being careful here.
Okay, so then hand in hand with that, would a suggestion be patrons interfering with service animals? In other words, I suppose then if you cannot say or ask, someone comes in, this is a huge issue sometimes about people wanting to pet, play, so on with the animal. And it interferes with the person who has the service animal. Now, I don't know that, there's a rule or a law that we probably can't put it in the policy, but worth noting or?
We do reference the policy and the act.
Okay.
It's up to the committee if you want to add a number 3 there in reference to what Vice President Bartelli is mentioning.
Well, I will say, I think for the most part, a person who does have a service animal will let you know immediately if they do not want you to pet the animal. That has happened to me anyway. My dog is working, so you're bright enough to understand, leave the dog alone. It's working. It's a service animal. I just thought I'd bring it up. I'm not asking for, just a thought.
So to piggyback on what Vice President Bartelli was just saying, I wonder if that's something that would need to be in our patron code of conduct as opposed to our policy in referring to ADA.
Good point.
If that makes sense. Because, we did reference, well, I don't know if we're in here, but someplace, maybe it was a different policy already, but the code of conduct, the patron code of conduct, maybe that's something that we could add to that at a later date to just, specify, to tie it in with this, with the service animals. I don't have that one. Tatiana, are you looking for that policy right now?
Yeah, it just goes into a little bit more detail about what would be unacceptable animal behavior. But as mentioned, we could, enhance this and talk about other patrons' behavior around service animals if we wanted to go that way.
I feel like that would be a better policy to address it in than this one, because I feel like this one is just talking about what we are doing to be in accordance with ADA, as opposed to then how other patrons are towards, say, service animals in this case. Does that sound good to you, Vice President Bartelli, to look at that in that area?
A great point. Thanks.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or concerns about this document before I go over to Trustee Duffy?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Duffy?
So this may be the policy to have this in. It may not. So we talk a lot about the facility, if someone needs meetings and collection, but what about programming? I know other libraries will do sensory friendly nights for people or hours, special programs designed for people that have disabilities. When I was doing a little research, I know it's unextensive, right? You may get a night or two a year or a couple of programs a year. But I'm trying to remember if we currently do anything like that within our programming. And at the top of my head, I couldn't come up with something that was very specific to a patron with a disability or patrons with a specific type of disability. But that was my comment here. I don't know if it needs to be in this, because this is probably more functional policy versus a programmatic policy. And but I think that would be something maybe to keep in mind is, could we start doing some of those programs post-COVID, right? Like, we can't do it now, but, post-COVID, to kind of, because I know we have patrons that fall underneath some of this guidance, and I don't want to leave them out.
Thank you for your comment. I did want to mention that our next policy we're going to discuss, 430, actually addresses that. At least to me it did, but we can further the discussion when we get to that policy.
Yeah,
I mean, I think part of it I thought we'll talk about when we get to that. That was why I was stressed trying to, where does it go, right? So,
Right. Okay, so are you good on this one then? Any other questions on 902? Okay, President Hummel.
I'm okay with it. Good with it.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee feel comfortable then sending it to the full board with the edits that we talked about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving right along. Number 8, LLD policy 430, also new, equity, diversity, and inclusion draft discussion. I'm gonna pass it over to the director.
Okay, so this is new. However, it's been on our radar for quite a while, even way before the pandemic. And this draft reflects various objectives within many of the ALA standards, as well as ALA's policy manual information on diversity. And as we all know, diversity is a very broad term. Many people think it simply refers to race, but it does not. It involves everything, everyone. It involves race, as well as age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, creed, color, religion, socioeconomic background, as well as disability. And equity and inclusion are also part of the title of this policy, because fairness and making everybody feel welcome and valued are part of who we are as a library, and also part of our strategic plan, especially when we talk about universal design and the like. So very much like the ADA policy, this policy too mentions the facility, our collection, partnerships, programming, staffing, and delineates how to file a grievance based on discrimination.
Okay, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, that we're seeing this policy and that we are discussing it tonight. I feel like it is a long time coming, so I'm glad that we're finally having the opportunity to discuss it. Before we get into a comment that I want to say just about the policy, I did have a little editing thing with a comma in 2 places. The final sentence of the opening paragraph, I would like a comma before or, and then disability, and then the same thing in A2, the comma after background before the or and disability.
Okay.
Got it? Okay, thank you. And then I did want to mention, the director already commented on how, sometimes we think about diversity, we just think about race, or we think about maybe sex or sexual orientation. But I think it's important that we do talk about all the different aspects of diversity and inclusion. And I wanted to share with the committee just something that a friend of mine who is Muslim had texted me. And she actually said, I have not gone to the Lisle Library in a very long time, but I'm sure you will help diversify the books, exhibits, and future activities so all residents of Lisle feel celebrated and included. So that was a Muslim friend of mine who said that, and when I talked to her about it, we talked about how she was asking. She said, "Do we have? Does the library have like a place, like a display case where you could put things up, or are there programming opportunities, or are there other things like that?" And I feel like this policy is really a good start to saying, yes, we value you and you're important, and we want you to be part of our library and including in all of that. So I just kind of wanted to share that little personal tidbit from someone who is a resident of the district. And then I want to hand it over to Vice President Bartelli. She shared with us something that she had gleaned from the ILA conference in October 2019 about safe spaces for LGBTQ plus youth. And I thought it was important, and I'm hoping that she'll share something too. We did get the document from her, but I thought maybe you could speak on it a little bit.
Sure. The last paragraph of the document I did send, I think there's some really good suggestions on there we might want to just consider. Especially with the proposed renovation, as far as labeling restrooms. I think it's a good idea that aside from family and so on, somehow we either label it with the LGBTQ plus or whatever, Tatiana, you're better at thinking about that. That in the seminar that I attended, I said it was very important for this group of people to visually see things labeled that way. A restroom, right now, I think most of us consider a restroom to be men, women, family. I don't know that, maybe gender neutral addresses it, but using the acronym is probably the easiest way to go. It's just an idea. And also that the staff, and this is a different issue, but when a person asks the staff where the restrooms are, they include that acronym. You might point out, well, there's a family and nursing restroom. It was a suggestion to try to include that acronym so everyone feels included, not have to ask for it. Just a thought. And then when we get to the first paragraph of policy 430, something I also learned, we want to be welcoming, and I understand in the third sentence the LLD denounces. It's, to me, that's somewhat harsh. I understand the thought. Yes, we do denounce it. Could we add something about that our policy is aligned, the language would be with LLD's values and missions, something to be a precursor before we're denouncing things. It's just, when I read things, I like to be positive and encouraged before I kind of see what we will not tolerate or allow, or so on and so forth. It's just a thought. So that's on that first paragraph. Let me see also, again, to piggyback on Secretary Swistak's, Chairman Swistak's idea about the book displays being relevant. I think that's very important, that there also, there'll be a display for including that population. There's one more, I believe. In section E, under number 3, complaints should be submitted. Should that say to the director, or would that be submitted to anyone on staff? In other words, you walk in the door, you have a written complaint and you give it to someone at the circulation desk and say, here, I have a complaint. Or, you know, should you, I don't know if you want to say to the director, but I suppose anyone walking in could leave a complaint letter. So a thought on that.
It does state to the director at number 1.
And number 1, okay.
Well, and then it kind of fleshes out what that complaint should be comprised of, or how long, and things like that. And then to your point, Vice President Bartelli, I could add the word display in B3.
E3.
It does say material and information, but we could throw the word display in there as well, because, I mean, it's kind of the same thing as information, if that would suit you.
Yeah. I think that I would like that, to see that. I don't know if you know, other people have an issue with that, that's fine. I mean, information is good, but these are just general thoughts to consider. But I suppose we're trying to approve the policy tonight, or bring it to the board, in other words. And the word, when we mention creed and religion, creed is actually, according to the dictionary, it's a system of Christian or other religious beliefs. It's a faith. So is creed the same as religion? Do we need to say both?
I mean, I pulled this from a number of different policies. I mean, creed can just be a belief system, not necessarily quote unquote religious. So I just use both, but we can take one out.
No, I'm just asking, you know, I suppose, I don't think anyone would really notice that. It's getting a little picky, but other than that, I think it's great.
To your point on the denounces on the first paragraph, the first sentence does is a supportive.
I'm sorry, where are we now?
At the very first sentence, first paragraph, regarding when you mentioned the denounces statement.
Okay.
The first sentence is a supportive statement, but maybe does the committee want more than just one supportive statement or sentence in that first paragraph, or do they think that those two are okay? When I've read a number of different diversity policies, there is generally a supportive statement, and then mention of all of the classifications that should not be discriminated against. So that's kind of how this came to be, but we can definitely enhance it if you want.
I think you're right. Supports, good word. Probably good with that. Any other, you want to go to the next person, Chairman Swistak?
Okay, thank you. Trustee Duffy? We'll come back, Marjorie.
Okay.
Well, it's actually piggybacking off of Vice President Bartelli's comment there, because my comment is I see no issue with the document, right? But to me, this is just a policy. How do you actually actualize it and implement it and integrate it within your programming and your operations is the value that comes from an equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. The document, so we talk, you know, it's a little light on that, right? Like, it's a very broad in that, and that's fine. But I actually think then that I almost would say we support the first sentence, we support, and then our next goal is not only to support it, but we are integrating, or we are, I'm going to use the word integrating, but I don't like it, but it's the only thing that's in my head right now. Integrating this into how we operate as a facility, as an organization. And so it's not just about, I mean, you could have for example, wonderful displays on all different types, but if that's the only thing you're doing, then it's not really that much, right? So that I think is what I would like to see in this, is something a little bit more oomph as to, okay, we're welcoming and we support you, but how are we actually using this in our operation? So we talk about, we have the physical materials, so that's part of it. Physical materials would probably also be one with the display. The programs, are we going to have programs that are we aiming to have a diverse set of programs each month? Or is it just once? Are we going to do it for all? Or I think that is where I've kind of struggled with this one and the previous one, which is everyone has these policies. Not everyone actually implements what they're supposed to be doing in the policy. Does that make sense? So I think that this is something I don't know if I'm verbalizing this correctly, because I think it's great. I think that this is exactly what you should be doing as a library. I just want to make sure that we're actually going to use it. I think that is the big crux of it. So that would be my challenge. Maybe I'm getting all the appetizers, but I'm looking for the main course in this document.
We have this, I think this happens a lot with policy writing, is that there are broad strokes here, and then you get into the nitty-gritty of the procedures that go into place to enact the policy. And I mean, we've discussed this with past policies, like should we really get into the detail of it? And we always pull away from that because we don't want to tie our hands in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily with diversity, but with any policy. So I think, to answer your question, and it is a tough one, because you want to be able to enact policies and you want to do the things you put on paper. But I think the way to evaluate that is to assess as you go throughout the year, whether it's via a director evaluation or a survey of patrons and things like that, to see because diversity is such a broad category. We're talking race, age, socioeconomic. So how do you outline, detail those particular categories, classifications, and make sure you attend to every one? It's tough.
I think it's a good. I think that this is where. So this is kind of the danger. I know I always preach data here, but this is the danger when you look at. Let's use the example of the patron that emailed Chairwoman Swistak. So we all know the data, right? Which is we don't have a very large Muslim population probably within the LLD area comparative to other populations. So if I took a survey and asked our residents what they felt about the programming, in general, I'm going to get back probably really strong scores on the programming. Well, because if I get a response rate that's just high enough, but I only get not enough of the sampling from that smaller portion of the population, I'll never capture that. So my question would be so before we had this policy, so I'm going to use the line here of B5. How did we reflect the diversity of genres, ideas, and subjects within our programming materials and resources before we had this policy? So I would assume that we were doing this pre-policy, right? Did we have how was that done?
That is done management through coaching, through leadership, and making sure that we cover all the bases, understanding our demographic, and we do that here. I mean, that's how we enact not only like programs and collection, but services too. So,
because I think what I would so policy-wise, this is fine, but probably 4 or 5 months from now after this policy is asked, so expect me to ask this question to Tatiana at some point, is I would like to see kind of like in one of the reports from the directors saying, hey, we got this policy that we did. Here's how we've done it. We've showcased, I'll just stick with the theme of the LGBTQ plus authors for a week here. And then we had a program for that was sensory friendly for patrons, and this is how we market it. I would want to see that transition from it, because we have wonderful programs, right? But those are examples that I think maybe have not been there in the same way that they should be, because we're never going to, again, if that's the point of doing a policy like this, it actually forces you to think about this so that you actually challenge yourself within the actual thinking. So I love this. And I apologize if I'm passionate. I actually used to do a lot of this, studying this in healthcare. So I would work with hospitals on this stuff, and I would always see something like this, and they would never have anything documented or not do much for it. So it's one of these things where you have to show action after this policy is approved. So I mean, Vice President Bartelli's document was wonderful. They give you exactly what you need to do it, but you actually have to do it. Sorry, I get off my soapbox.
No, that's good. Thank you, Trustee Duffy. President Hummel, do you have anything to add?
I like the policy how it is. I think it was the director mentioned, or it was mentioned, like how we like to keep our policies more broad and not as specific. For one reason, that we don't have to keep bringing them back, all the time. So I do like to keep it this way. If it doesn't get tweaked down the road, it gets tweaked down the road. But as of now, I mean, I think it's a good place. And I know also with some of the comments too, part of the thing we also do is we do address some of these things when we talk about our strategic plan. I mean, that's probably why we got this policy up here right now too. But I mean, besides the policy, we do have the strategic plan, which goes above and beyond the policies that we have. As far as I think there was one, I don't know if there was a potential change with B3 with adding display. I'm okay with it. It's not a big thing. I would just comment. We already do that a lot of the times. I know, especially like the first shelf, if you will, right here when you walk into the entrance, actually go this way. I mean, I know we just celebrated Black History Month. I mean, I know we've done other things, and even for the LGBTQ. I know in June, I believe it is, right. We've had books and materials out for that. As far as I mean, easy access to self checkout. I mean, I know we have that now. We're probably going to try to improve that going forward. But that's for everybody, regardless. As far as like staff, like just telling folks where the restrooms are. Restrooms in general tend to be together, like they are here or just any public building, because of plumbing issues, or the plumbing is right there. So, I mean, it's probably pretty simple for somebody asks where the restrooms. You say the restrooms are here or in the back of the library or wherever. I mean, I know when we get the family bathrooms, when we do the renovation, those, I think, at least in one of the preliminary drawings, they're, if I recall, I think they're not quite where the bathrooms are. Or I don't know if they're separate from the plant where we're planning to have restrooms, but I mean, we can cross that bridge when we get there. So staff can say restrooms are here, family bathrooms are over here, whatever the case may be. So I think, like some of that stuff, I mean, a lot of the stuff that's on here, we kind of already do in some capacity, I would say. So with beyond that, though, I actually think it's a good policy. I mean, I think it's well written. I'm okay with adding display. We kind of, like I said, we do that, I think, already, but that's fine. I mean, that's been a big thing. That's all I really have. So I'm okay with the policy as is. Or with that, adding displays is fine too.
Okay, thank you. I did want to comment on, because you just brought up the labeling the restrooms again. I think that's something that definitely will come up as we continue along with the renovation capital improvement project, and that's something that we can talk about. And if we're going to label it a family bathroom, or we're going to label it or a a all gendered bathroom, or whatever we're going to label it, to make it more accessible to everyone as far as that goes. Okay, so are we good with sending this forward to the whole board at our next meeting? Oh, yes, Director Weinstein.
I have all of the edits that everybody seems to agree with, except for that first sentence, because I know that Vice President Bartel and Trustee Duffy mentioned adding integrating into action or operations. Do we want an extra sentence in there that follows the first sentence in any way, that either connects us to the mission or integrating into action sentence? Just for, I mean, again, remember, if I add a sentence there, it will go to the full board and we can, edit again. But I wanted to know if that was a recommendation that I need to put into this draft.
So my thoughts on that, I'm almost feeling like if there's a good verb that we could add in after supports, like supports and blah, 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 equitable access. And I just can't personally think of the verb that would be good there, but I don't know if the other committee members have an idea, if they think another verb, or director, assistant director, if there's something that you could add in there to that same sentence just with another verb, or if you feel like we need to add a whole other sentence in that paragraph.
Would it be supports and promotes? That's not a good enough word.
No, that's, it and promotes is a good word. It's good adding it in. I don't know how everyone else feels about it. Again, it is going to go to the whole board, right? And we'll be discussing it again there, I'm sure, right? Maybe. I don't know.
I'm fine how it is, or the word, whatever.
Trustee Duffy?
I'm fine. I'm fine with the other two options. Just as President Hummel had mentioned, I mean, could do supports and values, supports and welcomes, but I think the promote is more actionable if you want that. But I'm fine with the promote. It gets to the spirit of it. And then we can always wordsmith something at the board meeting if we have to. I like the word welcome. Actually, when in the document that Vice President Bartelli sent, that was a word, but I'm fine with promote.
Vice President Bartelli, do you have anything to add there?
I agree with Trustee Duffy. I think we can wordsmith it probably with the full board, but we've got some good suggestions. As long as we all review our notes at the meeting and possibly bring it up.
Well, then maybe, Tatiana, could you put and value / promote / welcomes into the draft that goes to the full board? Or is that too much?
Welcome is at the end of that sentence.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
I like promotes. I think that works. And I will do a little thesaurusing before our next board meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was really a good discussion. So that one will go to the next board meeting as well. And then we're moving on to item 9 on the agenda, LLD policy 665, also new, recordings, photography, audio, and video at the LLD draft discussion. And I will turn it to the director.
Okay, yes. And this policy stems from the ILA's recommendation to have a security camera policy, in that we currently have procedures for taking photos and videos at the library, but no proper policy. And ALA and Rails also discuss this topic a lot under the kind of privacy umbrella and First Amendment issues and different like webinars and blogs that directors read all the time. And they do recommend having a policy that kind of delineates the do's and don'ts. So you have policy that staff can refer to when there are some actions that need referring to. We do have a policy, the patron code of conduct, that does discuss photography and what can't be done. But again, we don't have a comprehensive policy on general recording allowances or limitations. We do have signs in the building posted inside the meeting room here and just outside the meeting room. And I'm going to read what we post. It says, the Lisle Library District may occasionally photograph or record programs in and around the facility. And by participating in library programs, participants consent to be photographed and or filmed. Images or recordings may be used in LLD newsletters or other like communications on the website or on social media. The LLD will not name persons without their permission or, in the case of minors, without parental consent. If a program participant does not wish to be photographed, you must notify an LLD staff member at the program. And then refers to board meetings as well. All meetings that are subject to the Illinois Open Meetings Act will be recorded in accordance with LLD Policy 906, recording of LLD Board of Trustee meetings. So this policy draft covers all of the bases on the interior, exterior, obligations regarding copyright information, the library's recording information, and the Open Meetings Act reference at the end. So just to sum it up, we do have, and this was per our attorney way back when, to have some signage posted in the building for videography and photography, but we've never really had a policy. So that's what this is.
Okay, thank you. I just had one typo under B exterior. It says 162 instead of 123. I don't know. I don't know how that happened. That was my only thing that I caught in there. So I'll pass it over to, I'll do Trustee Duffy first this time. First, President Bartelli, you're off the hook for a minute.
And Vice President Bartelli was doing my work for me, though. Yeah, I actually didn't really have any changes on this. I think the only one was, and I think it covers it. It's A4, because I mean, clearly you just don't want an individual taking photographs or video of anyone without their express written consent, right? Like, I mean, I guess that would be my only, or because it says persons taking photographs or recording shall not compromise their right to privacy. I guess my question is, I think I know what that means. Do you want it stronger, or like, let me put it this way. If I was to go into the library and film like 30 seconds of stuff going on, and I was watching people come up to the service desk and leaving, I would assume that each person I would film, I'd have to get their written consent, right? Like, that would be, I'm using their likeness. I can't just film them and then post it somewhere. Do we feel comfortable enough that A4 is tight enough on that? I think that was my only thing.
So there's a lot of legal opinion on this out there. And there have been a lot of First Amendment challenges in libraries and other government institutions where someone could come in and take a picture of you in the building, and that is legal without your consent because it's a public building. But as far as a right to privacy, like a reasonable right to privacy, like, taking pictures in a restroom or taking pictures of you at the checkout counter with the books you checked out. because there is a Library Confidentiality Act, and that is in our policy manual, and we abide by that, where we don't give out that information. And taking a picture of somebody checking out materials would infringe on that act. But if you're just standing and someone took a picture of you from behind or the side and you didn't have any materials, that is allowable. So that's why we have to be careful on how to word this and have a little bit of gray area there.
Yeah. Could we reference that policy that you just said related to confidentiality in here then?
Okay.
Because yeah, I think that's really it, right? Like I'm okay. I understand the concept of the lack of privacy, I guess, in a public building, but a library is also different in the sense that even a village hall or the park district, if I come up and I'm paying something, you can't take a picture of me with my credit card and then post it or something to that effect. Like there is sort of the confidentiality to it. So yeah, if we could just list that, then I feel better about that section. Everything else to me was fine. I didn't have anything else.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Duffy. Vice President Bartelli.
I'm good with the policy. I agree with Trustee Duffy, though, to add that. Good idea.
Okay,
And I'm
thank
glad
you.
that this was per our attorney. That's always helpful.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. President Hummel.
Yeah, so in regards to A1, like reporting in public areas within the facility for personal, non-commercial use is permitted, what would be an example of that?
A selfie.
Oh, just like doing a selfie and stuff like that? But like if you have the art display, gallery 777, those type of photos?
Sure.
Okay. Then the only thing I might want to add on that is actually it would be the other way. They would not allow reporting for political purposes, or you're saying commercial, so would that be constituted as commercial purposes? Because it's not commercial, so that means commercial purposes are prohibited. But
That's also in our policy 610.
okay, so that's already covered somewhere else. So that's right. And then some of the other questions were addressed. The only other one, I guess, this is always a tricky one. I know, I mean, we do it, other units of government do it too, as far as if you go to a program or an event, your picture may be taken and used. And I know probably 90+% of the people don't have a problem with that, but there are, I see the minority opinion on this where, you know, if their picture's being taken and it's, then it's being used like in newsletters or promotional pieces, whatever the case may be. So I don't know. I always have an issue. I mean, it would be too tough to try to figure out who's who, track them down to say he has an okay use for permission. So I mean, and I know it does give us an option where it says if you don't want to be reported, patrons must other LLD staff. So this probably does go above and beyond most, where it does give an option. I guess could that lead us? Could that open us up to anything if somebody goes to a staff member and say, I want to be recorded or pictured, and accidentally they're in the background, and then they say, hey, my picture's in there, or is that? I mean, is it just best effort? Just best? Yeah, but what if it's like in a newsletter? You can't. I mean, if social media, you can remove it, but if it's something like a newsletter or print material, that you can't remove. But I don't know if we want to. Give ourselves at least a little wiggle room as far as saying best effort. Most, we will definitely try to comply. I just don't want, I mean, just in case that off chance somebody winds up in the background of the picture. It's, I mean, all efforts would be made. I guess, I don't know if you want to add that. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill here, but I just don't want us to kind of have accidentally contradict our policy and open us up for something. I don't know.
I totally see where you're getting at. I know that from when I've been in the building for programming, there's always been on the sign outside of it it mentions what the policy that or the statement that the director read to us earlier about that that they may be taking photographs and video recordings. And so I have seen that when I've been in the library for events before or programs before, so I know that it's there. And I mean, I get what you're saying. I feel like we're covering ourselves by having that signage there when we have these programs and events. And there's other places as well at the library. And I feel like that this, the policy helps us as well. I feel like it covers us. And if the attorney recommended that we do this, did he look at it as well as far as the verbiage goes, or no?
This was when we were putting signs up in, and he understood the language that we were going to use on the sign, not the policy.
Okay.
So that he felt covered us. This is going
Okay.
above and beyond having a policy. But we do want on D1E to add, if an event participant does not wish to be recorded, patrons must alert LLD staff. And we can say, and LLD staff will use every effort to, remove or not use. I can come up with a line there if that's what the committee
Okay.
wants.
So, I mean,
That's fine. I think it's fine to add that addendum there.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on this policy? Trustee Duffy.
Well, I mean, I guess my only question is, and President Hummel mentioned this, and I just got I didn't think of it this way when I read non-commercial, was the whole political thing. And because I could take a selfie video, so we've already established, right, I could take a selfie video if I'm not doing a commercial, if I'm not commercial. I guess my question is, and maybe this is a question for I just don't know the answer, is non-commercial use equated to political advertising, right? Like like a political ad, or knowing much stuff in politics, it's probably in the gray space, knowing our luck. But I guess that would be my only question, right? Which is, if you're not selling something, because I get that's the point where you don't want someone to go in there and use it for commercial purposes, but is political use commercial use, I guess, is the ultimate question. That is probably something that has been asked by people that have many more law degrees here. I don't know the answer to it. So that just got me.
This is something the committee can just put in. I mean, this is up to the board in the end, but we could put in, where am I? Personal, non-commercial, non-political use.
Mhm.
Because we do have a policy now that under the patron code of conduct about literature and distribution of material, and that specifically outlines political literature. So I think putting non-political in here is on par with that other policy.
so I had that.
Is the committee okay with that terminology?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because Trustee Duffy, it may mean the same thing you're saying, but we're being more clear by putting non-political in there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I struggle with this one, and I'm fine keeping it because I don't know where I land on it. It definitely should be moved forward. It's just like it's one of those things where, first of all, and we've seen in past elections where people will take videos at like Village Hall, right, and then post it. I imagine Village Hall and the library both are under the same basic civic institutions like coverage, right? It's just they offer different services. So what's the difference between if I could go to the Park District, I don't know if I can do this Park District, though. So I only know Village Hall is the only one I can do right now. So if I could go to Village Hall and do a video right in the middle there, but I can't do it at the library, but both of them are civic institutions, that seems to me to be not consistent with the idea. But I'm fine putting it in there. I don't even know how I feel on it. I think it's either, I just want consistency, right? Like if it's going to be consistent in all the areas, that's fine. Maybe I'm not, I don't understand the topic well enough to.
Well, it's just because this board has deemed it improper. So that's the answer. So if the village hall doesn't have a policy that says that they feel it's improper, that's okay with them. Our board has deemed political promotion is improper. Now, this board could change that. It could be, you could change this policy or change any policy to say that, you know, politics on premises is okay, but we're not there.
Are we, is it, actually, I was, well, when I was adding that, though, I was looking at more the interior, but I guess it is also E or B1 is basically the same as A1, except it's obviously referring to the exterior. So.
Yeah, we would have.
Yeah, so I was actually, when I was doing this, I was just looking at the interior, but I forgot about the exterior.
Oh, we would just add it there too.
Yeah, so I wasn't even looking at the exterior part of it, to be honest with you at the time, but.
Well, and to be honest, and I just remembered this. In 2019, I would have violated this policy when I ran, because I'm pretty sure I had it on there. But I guess I think I'm comfortable with it in the interior, because that's where the people are, right? I think that is the privacy. I'm fine on the exterior for political stuff. I think I'm more concerned. I don't want anyone that's going to be interfered with. Like, you should be able to go to the library. You shouldn't have to worry about anything that.
And just remember that you can distribute political literature 15 feet from the front door. So maybe it doesn't belong in the exterior.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, I was referring to the interior. I wasn't even looking at B1 until when you were talking about outside of Village Hall. They're like, oh, our B1 is basically the same as A1. It's just one's interior, one's exterior. So I was more talking interior,
right? And
then exterior, I suppose it's okay. I mean, the only thing is, I don't know if we just want to specify as long as it's off or during the closed hours, because you can do it.
Well, again, it says related to policy 610. So I think, I mean, we are covered in our code of conduct in terms of activity on the premise.
Then probably just leave it at A1.
Yeah, A1.
And then I think that covers us.
Okay, so my question is, what does that mean then? What would be a political recording, photo, video? What would that be? And the only reason I'm asking is because I maintain a trustee Facebook page where I share pictures of my kids or my family or me having been at library events, and I'm inside those programs, or my kids are there, and is that acceptable? Is that not acceptable? Because it's my trustee page, which then is that political? And so I need to make sure I'm understanding what this means, right? Or or would it be more like me saying, hey, or anyone saying, hey, I'm running for this candidacy and I'm in this place, and including it in that kind of a post or that kind of publication? I don't know. I need clarification on what we're saying here to make sure that I get it.
It's probably more a recording, like a video.
No, recording is covering all types of, because a recording, I mean, even in legal terms, it's any type of recording, whether it's an image or audio or video. That's a good point.
I mean, I guess that if it was, I would think more like video, like cut in a commercial, a picture. Especially if it's of your family. Actually, I'll pause. Vice President Bartelli, let's see. You got
Yeah, go
some.
ahead, Vice President Bartelli. Your hand's up. Go ahead.
This brings up an unpleasant situation that we dealt with. I'm glad you brought it up, Chairwoman Swistak, because I mean, we dealt with this, and I know that it had to do with using the library logo in a campaign situation. But I mean, everything you're talking about applies to the same situation that we went through. I mean, I think some of it is addressed in the trustee code of conduct. But that situation applies here too. Chairwoman Swistak, I don't want to get into an argument, but from what we discussed previously regarding the issue I'm speaking of, I would consider in my reelection campaign, if I strolled through the library and made a recording about how often I use the facility or don't, or whatever the case may be. That's political. I believe that would present a positive image for me towards my reelection. So, I mean, we need to address this somehow. I like the way this is written. I'm in total agreement with it. But we've really touched on a very sensitive issue. And I think maybe as a committee right now, we better get ahead of this, because when you open it up, not that we shouldn't, and we will, to the full board, we're going to get a lot of varying opinions on this. So this is a place to discuss it amongst ourselves, because we're tasked with setting this policy. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you for your feedback there. And and that's the thing too, that, in, like, I don't know when it was, yesterday, the day before, but I, shared pictures from last year's Harry Potter day. And it was a picture of one of my kids getting the tattoos. And it was some pictures from inside the library from the event, because I've in the past used my trustee page to kind of amplify what the library is doing. And so I typically am just sharing things from there. Currently now, yes, I have put on their information about running again for reelection, but I haven't been taking any pictures or doing anything inside the library as part of my campaigning, I guess. So I've been trying to continue that method of amplifying what the library is putting out, and then sometimes the community, but then my own campaigning stuff is independent of that. And I don't know. You're right. It is kind of a gray, area here as far as that goes. And from what you were referring to before, Vice President Bartelli, if I'm thinking the same thing you're thinking, that wasn't a campaigning thing. That was trying to do something independently for the library without the board's permission. And so it wasn't a campaigning thing. It was a different thing. And if we're talking about political, are we talking about just political in general? Are we talking about campaigning? What are we talking about here as far as this goes? Trustee Duffy, you had your hand up.
Well, man, usually this is the kind of conversation you need around like a fire or something at midnight. The thing that part of the reason why I am ironically less restrictive on this one, when I'm usually more restrictive, is to me, it boils down to more. You just identified the logo thing. I think I do kind of put that to the side, but I do understand the spirit of where you're coming from, Vice President Bartelli. But there is sort of this element of truly of just free speech, right? Which is, I'm in an open institution, civic institution. If I adhere to my patron code of conduct. I don't use any library staff or resources for political campaigning. I'm in the building, and I get express written consent from anyone that I use in there, and they're not staff. Then, and I'm not selling the video for money, right? I'm selling me or as the candidate. Then, to me, it doesn't really. I don't see an issue with that. Because, but if you start restricting it, what if it's not just political candidates, right? What if it's a library association or a group of concerned citizens that want to, I know, save libraries 20 years from now and they can't film there? It's not just about candidates. It could be about a variety of different. So that's why I actually adhere more towards the freedom aspect on this versus anything else. But I do understand the spirit of where the concern is coming from, right? Like we don't want just everyone just filming 20 political ads in front of the reference desk. But I don't think that that's going to happen. But even if that did happen, if it's allowed, they're not breaking any rules by the code of conduct, then I think it's different. But I don't know if you're going to probably ask if this is something that should go to the next stage. I don't know if I'm ready to have it go to the next stage. I feel like I need to kind of think about this more because some really good points have been brought up.
So I think there should be some restriction, but like, I was probably thinking more video recording things, like literally a commercial or maybe just a step below, like with Secretary or Chairwoman Swistak mentioned about the sharing like the Harry Potter photos. That is it typically. I mean, that's what I was really thinking. That I don't really have necessarily a problem with.
I think we can have a suggestion.
Just pass it as is and maybe come back to this one later on.
Well, I mean, you can pass it as is if you like, but I have a suggestion regarding, because what Trustee Duffy mentioned about, organizations who are, nonprofits and things, I mean, that is a non-commercial use, so that's allowed. But I think where we're getting at, and even using the term political is tough, because that's not necessarily referring to campaigning. So if we refer to recordings for campaigns, we could do like an asterisk or a footnote in there that says recordings for campaign purposes must have explicit consent of said blah, 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 or we could footnote it in terms of a campaign. So in Trustee Swift's situation, if she's taking photos of her children at the library, I mean, she has consent versus, someone coming in and making a commercial and not receiving consent. So having something, a footnote there regarding campaigning specifically, and whatever we say, I mean, we could come up with any language there for campaigning, if that's the kind of crux of everything, or is it?
So I guess my question is, or comment, I guess, I don't know if as a committee right now, we're comfortable with where we're at to send it to the full board. It feels like we need to spend more time on this, but I don't know, do we have a time constraint? Like, would this need to go to the next board meeting, or can we put it off until our next committee meeting?
No, there's no deadline to have this done. I mean, we do have the signs up, and we're not even doing in-person programming at the moment.
Right.
So there's no rush to get this done. It's just because we were doing the library security cameras, and that we did have the signage of, I was reading a lot about recording, and so I thought putting together a policy that kind of puts because what we have on signs in a policy made sense. But this can be,
Well-
tabled.
Can I make it once? Somebody?
We lost Trustee Duffy. Maybe he just
I'm
turned his
still-
camera off.
No, I'm still here. My computer decided to just randomly restart. So
Well,
I'm
we can
here.
hear you. We just
Here.
can't see you.
Yeah.
So,
I'll be there in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
about, another suggestion, I mean, we could pass the policy basically as is, except for a couple of other little changes. I think we were gonna add a policy reference, I want to say to A4, was it? I could
Yes,
be
the
wrong. And
confidentiality.
then E1, and then we could always come back and bring this back to policy, and revisit political, non-political discussion. We do that.
So,
Is that an option?
so taking out just where we added in non-political and just taking that out for now and just adding in A4 where we talked about referencing the policy with confidentiality. We talked about doing that and then fixing the numbering under B to 1, 2, 3. And then in DE or D1E, adding the LLD staff will ... You had mentioned that you're going to add that there as well, and just kind of leave it at that point for now and put it forward, and then we could bring it back at another meeting to make adjustments. Is that what? Are we comfortable with that? Do you want to do that?
Or you could leave the non-political in and pick that up into.
I think that's a red flag.
Okay, don't do that then. Okay, but this,
The reason why I'm hesitant about the non-political is because we haven't determined for ourselves even what that means. And I think that makes it hard for us then to say, okay, this is the policy when we're not even clear on what that means.
that's fine.
And
that's fine.
everything else is
We're good.
pretty on.
Yeah,
on
so what
point.
I would say, my opinion would be just to move the policy forward and then next policy.
And then we can bring it back to the next time.
Yeah,
Vice President Bartelli, do you feel okay about that?
I'm sorry, President Hummel, you said approve it as is? And then,
Yeah, so we would move it forward with some of the other some other changes we had, except the non-political part, we're just gonna leave out for now, and then we'll revisit this. So this policy, with some of the amendments, will move forward to the board. We don't want to hold up the whole thing just for this one discussion. And then probably at a future, the next personnel policy committee meeting, we'll bring this back.
Discuss it again.
The non-political aspect of it. So we all can determine, maybe think about it more. Again, it's gonna have to be probably pretty specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably I mean, I think that's good. I don't want to hold up the whole thing just for that. I mean, I think it's important, but I don't want to hold up the whole thing for that, though.
Vice President Bartelli, you look like you want to say something.
I don't want to hold it up. I just want to I'd like to ask Director Weinstein a question. Have you had any questions regarding this, the issues covered in this new policy about questions about recordings, photography? I mean, recently, so what, I think you may have explained it, but I didn't quite understand it. What prompted formulating this policy?
So when I was drafting the library security policy, I was reading a lot about other policies, other libraries, other institutions that had these types of policies, and about recording, images, video, audio. And we do have signs at the library, and that's all we have. So that's why I thought putting those signs, the language in the signs that was approved by our attorney into a policy made sense. That's why I drafted this. But there is no rush to forward it. But as far as the political aspect of it, I think we can enhance that down the line and pass just these general guidelines for recording.
Okay, I agree also, we can move it forward, and as you suggest, take that other matter up at a different time. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, sounds good. Trustee Duffy, you're good with that too?
I am. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, so all of the policies that we have discussed this evening are going to go forward to the full board meeting, our next full board meeting. Item number 10 on the agenda is director evaluation draft/discussion. If you see in your packet, there was a memo that I had typed up to share with you, and you see there's lots of like question marks in there and things like that, but these are things that I wanted to think about, and I felt like at this point, because it's been a while since we've met and discussed this, if we could go through and kind of figure out our timeline and the process and what we want to do and how to do it so that future boards won't come in and say, I have no idea what to do. How does this work? We will have a policy or procedure in place to say, okay, this is how this goes, and to start with that. So if you look at number 1, it says timeline, and then entire process needs to be completed before July 1st. So then I said May/June completion. I didn't know if we had strong feelings about, when it wanted to be completed, the entire timeline moving up, into that. But if you look at the A and the B underneath, we would need to have an executive session without the director for the board to discuss and finalize ratings and board goals, and then an executive session with the director to discuss final evaluation, rating, and goals. And clearly the one without the director would need to happen first, and then the other one with the director would have to happen after. And if we needed to do special board meetings, or if this was just executive sessions that were part of a regular full board meeting. And then on number 2, form for individual trustees to evaluate director, that's to be created. That's one of the things that we have talked about as a board as a whole, is having each trustee have the opportunity to evaluate the director. And so creating a form for that. We had talked before about then that trustee evaluation being submitted to the board secretary, and then the secretary compiles the responses in advance of executive session in May. But again, there's questions there with the timeline about when things should be completed by to get that process going. And then also including in number 3, self-evaluation form for the director, submitted to the board president, the board secretary. I have no idea. Also in May, I don't know. Includes personal goals, which is something we've talked about in the past as well. And then number 4 was the complete evaluation should include, and then there's just a strategic plan, initiatives and accomplishments, and then whatever else. So I was kind of hoping that we could start discussing this and maybe at least getting the timeline part down where we think things need to be completed. And then for our next Personnel and Policy Committee meeting, we can start talking about some of the documentations or some of the form creation for this. So I'm not sure how everyone feels about it, but it just kind of felt like an easier way to approach it at this point, because I felt like we needed to have that timeline and that procedure down. So does anyone want to go first with comments or questions or suggestions?
I could go first. If you
Okay,
want.
President Hummel.
I know historically we've done it in May, correct? Tatiana, I know this past year was different because of the craziness with COVID when it was first going on.
But, yeah, her timeline is right here, Mayor.
Yeah. So, and then this year, when did we do your September, I think it was? So are we doing like September through May, basically would be this year? I mean, usually it'd be, I guess,
A full year, right? And that's kind of where we got tied up, is that this past year, because of the pandemic, we kind of delayed the process, and I feel like we need to get back on, especially because of the fact that every 2 years there's a new board being seated, and I don't think a new board really can evaluate the director on the previous year's performance because they haven't been there. And so, the new board is seated in May, June, I don't remember.
I believe it's the 3rd Monday in May, is that correct? Usually
So-
there's not, yeah, actually, I was just gonna look at something since we changed our meetings to see how that would fall. So May 17th, 3rd Wednesday, May 19th. So the new board would meet on May 19th, if it's.
Could.
But the board, is our scheduled meeting May 19th, I think it would be the third Wednesday. And then if it's the third Monday this year, yeah, you're right, every year might be different, but this year, so the new board would take seat
That's the first day,
the first day,
yes. You have until like June 15th or something to
Correct.
complete that.
correct, but I mean, so May 17th, a new board, if they wanted to take their oath, could be sworn in on May 17th this year, which is the third
Okay.
Monday. The board meets on May 19th, third Wednesday. So for this year,
It could be a new board on there.
there could be a new board. Now, some years it might vary, and in past years, when we were meeting the second Wednesday, and that's what's always usually happens, this board would have met the second Wednesday, so never really was an issue.
So if need be, then, I mean, because we're doing the third Wednesday of the month
Yeah.
on this year, then, then we could hold a special board meeting in advance of the oath of office for the new board members.
Do that too.
So I guess it really does need to be a May completion then, right? Or in an election year, I guess. If it's not an election year, I guess it could happen and be finalized in June because it just has to be done by July 1st. I don't know if we want to stipulate in an election year versus a non-election year. I don't know. I don't know how everyone feels about that. Or if we just think, okay, we should just have it set.
I think it's probably good to try to be consistent and have it May of every year. I think it was just this year was crazy, and because it was an off year for an election, it wasn't an issue. If like COVID was a 2021 issue, that might have, I don't know, we probably would have had to figure out a way to maybe do the director evaluation somehow by May. But I would try to keep it consistent. I mean, I know last year we moved it around, but we had that flexibility. I mean, and boards could always have that flexibility, I suppose, anyhow, but I think we should try to target in May. Although, even going forward now, since I even looking at the calendar, maybe this year we could do May, like you said, if we have to, we could do a special meeting May 17th if necessary, but I don't know, maybe even going forward, we might even try to shoot for April, so that would start to get a little tough. So I would just keep it at May, I guess, for start.
So May, if we're saying for the timeline, the entire process needs to be completed by May, right? Or in May. And then we're not specifying what date in May. We could just say in May.
Yeah, just say May, because I mean, like you said, there, in case we do want to have a special board meeting this year before
Right.
I mean, it gives you some flexibility. I mean,
So then in 1A, where it says with an executive session with the board without the director to discuss and finalize the ratings, what we've done in the past is we've done that and then we brought the director in after that to discuss. So I don't know or we've had the director in and then she leaves and then we discuss and then she comes back. So I don't know if we would want to do that all together on the same day or if we wanted it to be two separate executive sessions, which is why they're two separate, points. But I don't know how everyone feels about that.
When I read this, because this is still in such a weird time, my feeling was I agree on the May, getting it done in May, but really just kind of sticking to the normal process that we've done. Because, I mean, listen, May's in literally 2 months, right? Like, there's no time to create a trustee evaluation type system or anything like that. I would do the same that we did last year, create it simple, because it's not even going to be a full year of review. So that alone is unique. And then using some of the stuff in this memo to flush out during the summer, because I think you identified in there, Chairwoman Swistak, related to goals. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no like specific goals right now. It's the strategic plan, right? That's the biggest thing we always look at. And I know, Tatiana, you usually write your review, your self-reflection to the strategic goals. But there's no specific goals that have been set, and that should probably get done over the summer after this review. And that would have to be tackled by any new iteration of the board this year, but not every year. But I think that would be the best, or that would be my recommendation. It's just too much of a crazy year to throw a wrench into it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Vice President Bartelli, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I'm in agreement. I guess I'm trying to figure out where we left it. You mentioned, director evaluation and the self-assessment was back in September. I'm looking at that right now. And I'm wondering, well, maybe I'm jumping the gun. I'm wondering how we address whether these have been met or because it is a self-assessment, it's a snapshot, and it's something that will already be passed. I mean, so each month was taken, listed, pertinent reports, meetings, statutory responsibilities. We have the strategic plan initiatives. How will we address the self-directed goals for 2021 that is in here? So we're saying, what we're saying is we will delay that then until, summarize it for Chair.
So my understanding from what we've already been discussing a little bit is that we're going to stick with what we've been doing for now to get it accomplished by May this year before the seating of a new board. And what we're going to work on as a committee is then the process and forms and documentation stuff for going forward post May. So we're starting to try to flush out what it's going to look like, but it won't be in effect for this year other than us saying we need to finish it in May. Because we're still in this public health crisis situation, and because we did last year's evaluation in September, but we need to finish it by May this year, and things are kind of in flux still. But then we'll, as a committee, we'll continue to work on this as we go forward. Is how I was understanding what other people were saying and feeling, especially the president, because he works so closely with the director as far as that goes with the evaluation process. So I feel good right now that we've said, okay, it has to happen in May, and that we got, those things done. And then, we can talk in the future then about the other pieces to it. I feel like because of the fact that we're not going to start a new thing before this year, this evaluation cycle is up, then we have some more leeway time-wise to kind of get this accomplished. If I'm saying that correctly.
It's probably something we should try to make sure we address early, or try to get it completed by no later than the beginning of, the next fiscal year at the absolute latest, so we be fair to the director and give her basically a whole fiscal year to whatever evaluation change or update or upgrade we do for the process, so she has that whole year. Because I think that was been hold up before when we tried to start this as well. We're already X months into the year, so how do you do it? So, I think at least that we're having it on our plate now, it's good, because at least then we could try to nail this out in the next couple months, 3 months, and hopefully have it ready for preferably by the beginning of fiscal year, or like I said, even very, very, at the absolute latest, early part of the beginning of fiscal year 2021, 2022. And I know we worked on it, I don't know how many months ago briefly, so maybe try to revisit. I gotta go back and look at the notes from that meeting too, because I know we were studying it and it just got probably pushed to the side, but.
Well, and in the past in our committee meetings, we talked about what we thought the evaluation should look like and things like that. And I felt like we were getting really bogged down with that. And I wanted to take a step back so that we could say, okay, wait, let's figure out the timeline. Let's figure out the process so that we have that set for going forward. And then after that, we can go back to the, okay, what do we want the actual evaluation to look like? But I wanted to get this structure thing done first. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but it was kind of like, for me, I felt better taking the step back and saying, wait, let's figure out this first and then go to the other.
I agree.
Okay.
So does everyone feel okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so are we okay then just saying, okay, we just need to finish it by May right now, and then we will discuss this at a future committee meeting and kind of leave it at that for now?
Sounds good.
Are we good with that? Okay, well, that was the last item on the agenda other than adjourn. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
This is Vice
I move.
President Kelly. I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Discussion?
Oh, sorry, discussion. Thank you, Chris.
None.
Okay, seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli?
Aye.
Thomas Duffy?
Aye.
Emily Swissack?
Aye.
Thomas Hummel?
Aye.
Okay, our meeting is adjourned at 8:56 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.